Thank you very much, Mr. Stein. Ladies and gentlemen, attendant of this visiting professor, we are glad to have you here today. Today is very important for us in order to improve our international integrity, for example. And then also very important for students as well, because it's very, very rare for us to have important lectures according to our competence. In this time, let me introduce our visiting professor. We are going to give us international lectures in this occasion. Let me introduce Professor Dr. Mark Russell. Thank you. And also we have Dr. John Luis Menjivar. So I am in charge as a Vice Rector for Academic Affairs. Dan Ibu Pak sekalian, saya sangat senang kita bisa berkumpul di sini ya untuk bersama-sama melakukan kuliah tamu. Those professors are coming from University of Florida, United States, which was we visited last year to this University of Florida. And then in this visiting lectures have to be done in order to improve our international accreditation, our international integrity as well. And you know, Udayana University with other universities such as University of Padjajaran, UNPAD, University of Sriwijaya, University of Diponegoro, and then led by University of Indonesia, have already awarded research aid that we call USAID SHERA project. Yeah. In this relationship, we have this visiting lecture. Tentu Ibu Pak sekalian, kami sangat berharap, we do hope that this visiting professor to give us understanding how the lectures outside in very, very famous university outside, as well in University of United States, how held the lectures, research as well. Yeah. And then for Professor Russell and Ruiz, and then let me introduce, today we have around 200 attendants for this visiting professor. They are coming from Udayana University lectures, and then Udayana University students as well, right? And then we do hope that what you are give as a lecture, which are going to be give benefit for us, right? And then we do hope today is the last day for us, but we do hope that the next future between Udayana University and the University of Florida will give our collaboration for the long term, right? Maybe if you have time, you can come again. You are welcome to come again to Udayana University. And also, if possible, we are going to send our students as well our faculty members to learn, to study, to participate in University of Florida in all its program. Thank you very much for today for coming, and then welcome to Udayana University, welcome to Bali, and enjoy your visit in Udayana University. Terima kasih Bu Bapak sekalian, mudah-mudahan bermanfaat kuliah tamu kita pada hari ini. Terima kasih.
Please allow me to convey our warm welcome to both of you, and I thank you very much for visiting us, and as has been mentioned by our Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, often and repeatedly since we met this morning. And thank you so much for visiting us, and especially your kind willingness to share your excellent academic and also your research interest with all of us. And I cannot repeat again what we are aiming. This would not be just a one event, but this is just a beginning for a future long-term collaboration between the University of Florida and University of Udayana. Just to strip down the formality, since we are short of time a little bit, I must apologizing to all of you, since just for technical reasons we could not start at 9:30 as it was scheduled, just because of the timing that we have to meet with Ibu Rektor this morning in her office. So the time for us to start is a bit late, but I'll be trying hard to make it on time at the end of the guest lecture. And again, just to save the time, the limited time that we have, I will go straight with the guest lecture, started by Dr. Mark Russell. He's going to talk about the implementation of green design and commercial tourism buildings. A short introduction about Dr. Mark Russell. He is currently with the University of Florida College of Design, Construction and Planning. His academic and research interests fall within the area of building construction, sustainable construction practices, project management, life cycle assessments, building rating system, construction material stewardship. Welcome, and time is yours. Thank you very much. Yes. The lecture will be delivered for 40 minutes, followed by a 20 minutes question and answers. After having a permission from both Mark Russell and Oleh, you are free to interrupt in case you have questions in between lectures. But I'll be a bit tight with timing, and just to try to be on time a little bit for today's event, so we would be having to extend our session for today. And would you like to go up together or just one by one? Okay, good. That would be good. Okay. Yes, as long as you pay me later on. You do?
I'm used to more interaction with my students, and so if you don't mind, can you hear me okay? Everything all right? Fantastic. I'm really excited about this opportunity. I had I was one of the people selected back in November to come to Jakarta and do a series of lectures and to help with some technical writing for the Indonesian scholars. And so when I heard the opportunity to come back now, I jumped at it. This is so exciting for me. I greatly enjoy Indonesia. The Indonesian people are very warm and welcoming, and I will take any opportunity I can to come back here. This is fantastic. And has anybody here been to Florida before? Anybody? All right. It's basically like being here, right? It's hot and humid and very lush. But I have to say, the Indonesian people I find so much more warm and welcoming. So I'm really excited about this. Let me start off by a little caveat. I'm from the South. We talk a little funny in Florida, in the southern states. So if I start talking too fast, if I start using a strange accent where it's hard for you to follow me, yell at me. I can slow down, and I'll be happy to do that. I want you to be able to understand what I'm saying. And so if I do start talking a little fast or putting on that southern accent, let me know. I'll behave myself. So you guys good with that? And so I had some slides. I got my doctoral dissertation looking at building rating systems, life cycle assessment, and what makes them sustainable. Like any, like a number of professors, I do consulting on the side. And my consulting is I'm an assessor that actually goes and evaluates buildings for the sustainability. And so I was fortunate enough in December to do some really neat buildings in Las Vegas. You guys all heard of Las Vegas? All right? And so it's got some pretty big tourism buildings. And so what I was going to mainly do today is kind of share some of those experiences with you. So, all right. Cool. We're getting there. Yeah, next one. This is basically outline what I'm planning to talk about. And so I'm just kind of do some introductory type elements. I'm going to ask you guys some questions in a minute, and based upon that, we'll determine how much I will cover the introductory portion. I'll talk a little bit about different rating systems, and you'll see how that kind of fits into the lecture after that. And then I've got some sample projects. What I'm basically going to do is go through a typical scorecard for how we rate buildings, and I'm going to give you examples of things I found that that work, and some examples of that. I got a pointer too. Some fingers. I'll put my app. Nice. All right. I'll hurt myself with that. And so, all right. So we'll be talking about various elements for sustainable building, and then open for questions. Is that a good plan? Since I put this together relatively recently, I have a somehow everyone needs to. Yeah, technical difficulty here. It's embarrassing. It's gone to a totally different view. All right. So with introduction, basic information about myself. You can read about that. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. At this point, I'm going to ask you guys some questions. First off, how many faculty do we have in here? Who are faculty? Faculty or staff? A few? Okay. Yeah, you can raise your hands. Yeah, raise your hand. How many graduate students? Raise your hands. Turn to see what we got. Any graduate students? Working on their master's or doctorate? Right? Okay. Undergraduate students? Raise your hand. I want to see you. Hey. A few? What's the what? PhD students? Okay, PhD students. What PhD students do we have? Oh, fantastic. Good. All right. Now let me get a feel of your experience, what your background is. Architects. Any architecture people?
Adik-adik arsitek, ayo dong.
Architects? Nice. Excellent. Cool. Engineers. Engineers. Oh, come on, don't be afraid. I know you're very busy looking at your shoes. It's okay. Raise your hand, all right? Engineers. Cool. So, my undergrad is actually, I was electrical engineering and switched over to civil engineering. And so, let's see. Economists. Any economists out there? Sorry, Jorge, this is my audience. You gotta talk. Okay. All right, now let's think about as far as working on sustainable projects. Has anybody worked on a sustainable project before? None of you have worked on what you consider a sustainable project. In class, have you learned about the theories, sustainable theories? Anybody's taking any classes on sustainability? Anybody? Raise your hand if you have. None? All right. we'll spend more time on the first part of this lecture, right? which I cover more of the basics of what makes a building sustainable. And so, why is this? I have no, this is. Alright, so what we're going to talk about is what makes something sustainable. What does that word mean, sustainable? What do you guys think? Sustainable. When you hear that word, what does it make you think of? Any thoughts? For the plan for the future? I like that one. Native Americans have a philosophy that sustainability to them is the impact on 7 generations from now. Right? So what is that, your grandchildren? All right? Did I say enough great? Okay? That's kind of a neat idea, okay? That's one way to think about it. The Norwegians have a kind of similar philosophy that, don't do any impact that can't be reversed. Medical has a few on it of do no harm, hurt nothing. A lot of, couldn't click it again. Yeah. A lot of people look at sustainability as just the environment, just the idea that we're going to make sure we preserve the forests, the oceans, preserving at any cost, right? No matter what it is, trying to preserve our resources, trying to preserve our air quality, our water quality. Do you guys like that idea? You think that's good enough? Let's click again. Again. Now, if all you're worried about is the trees, the water, the air, what about us? Shouldn't sustainability also involve us as people? If we're preserving all these trees and we're dying in the process, is that sustainable? Well, it's for the trees, right? But for us, right, we have to consider this human factor in addition to that. We have to consider our quality of life. We don't want to be imprisoning our people. We don't want to enslave you or have you working in conditions that are horrific, right, just to provide the environment. You can't sustain that for very long either. So we also added a third factor on this, the economic standpoint. If during the process of making something sustainable, we go broke in the process, how sustainable is that? If you end up losing your job, if you don't have the money to continue our operations, we'll stay continuing after that. We often talk about sustainability, we call this a three-legged stool. Go ahead and click, right? And it's this combination of the environmental, the social, and the economic standpoint. Bringing all of those together is how you really address a project of being truly sustainable. A lot of different systems are out there in which you'll look at just one portion of that. But environmental is the most common one that we try to focus. My point to you is recognize it's the whole system. It's totally encompassing it all. You've got to consider us as people as part of that. You've got to consider the cost of that. A lot of contractors get very upset when they hear that you want to make your project sustainable because they think you're going to make them broke in the process. You're going to charge them all these extra things. And you want that high efficiency air handling system that costs twice as much, right? What I'm here to talk about is ways that you can still make it sustainable and still make a profit, still have it such that you can continue to operate, right? And so the projects I was looking at, that was a major factor to them, of trying to get that proper balance. And so the whole philosophy on sustainability. We really started the movement for sustainability, let's say back in about the 1970s. Back during the oil embargoes, people were recognizing that, we really might want to consider the environment in a little bit more detail. So pretty shortly after that, when industry was recognizing that, the sustainable thing is kind of marketable, right? People are interested in buying that. So all of a sudden, the various companies were like, if we label our product as being green, right, make it sustainable, we'll attract more people. And so it was very common, right? You would see people just start to label various things and sit there and say, call it sustainable, right? I'm going to slightly divert to something maybe all of you are a little bit more familiar with to give an example of this. How many of you have had to fill out resumes for jobs? Anybody ever have to fill out a resume to apply for a job? A common thing you have to do. You will, right? When you apply for a job, is that common in Indonesia? You fill out a resume, okay? You ever had friends? None of you would ever do this, I'm sure. Okay? You ever have friends add things on your resume that you kind of wonder about? Okay? One of the things I've learned here in Indonesia is selamat pagi. Okay? Did I say that right? Selamat pagi. You know, from now on, I'm going to add on my resume that I'm fluent in Indonesian. Right? Back in the States, who's to say it otherwise? Right? When I get back to America, oh, that's me. Right? Okay. We would, in our industry, we'd call that greenwashing, right? I'm just putting this label. I'm just calling this myself. I've self-evaluated myself as saying, oh, I know Indonesian. Okay? One of the things I recommend to my students, and I recommend to you also, when you do your resume, don't sit there and self-evaluate yourself. Okay? For me to put on my resume, I know Indonesian. All of you know that's not true. Now, if I was to include on my resume that I studied at the Defense Language Institute for 6 months, I'm certified in Italian, right? And I can show my certificate for that. Wow, and he's like, okay, I don't have to listen to him speak Italian, but I know he understands some Italian. Si, va bene. Tutto posto? Right? And so, we run into the exact same situation with products. So back in the 1970s, people were running around all over the place. I don't know if you can see the example here of this one bottle that's labeled as earth-friendly, phosphate-free, chlorine-free, chemical-free, for a safe, ethical, clean, non-tested on animals, right? They just label whatever they want. Without some validation, third-party source to come in and confirm, what does it mean? My point with this process is I want you to be skeptical. If somebody is sitting there and saying, we're sustainable, based upon what? What's the criteria that they're using to establish? Who has come in to provide that validation? How have they got that additional certification? For them to just add all these things, it's the same as my saying, I'm from Indonesia. Right? Without that, yes, I have an authority on this, and this is the validation for that. Buildings, we have a similar type of issue. And so if we wanted to sit there and evaluate various buildings, then you want to follow a code. You want to follow somebody has established standards such that your building meets these criteria demonstrated by these particular qualities, and an outside person has come in and provided certification. Now if I sit there and say my building is green or sustainable to the third level in accordance to the Green Building Council in Indonesia, it's like, oh, I understand what that means. I can put them on a level with other people. And so, a little history here. Have anybody heard of the first one, BREEAM? Anybody heard of that? BREEAM comes out of the UK. It was actually the first building rating system. It stands for Building Research Establishment, that's BRE, that's a group in the United Kingdom that looks at buildings. And in 1990, they came up with their environmental assessment method. And that's how you get BREEAM, Building Research Establishment Environmental Assessment Method. And it was the first rating system for buildings in the world. Pretty neat. That came out about the same time that the United Nations in the Rio de Janeiro Protocol established eco-labels. And so the United Nations said, wow, these things that BRE is doing is pretty cool. We got to do that for other products also. And so now, if you want to buy something and confirm it's sustainable, there are a number of labeled resources out there that are ISO, International Standards Organization qualified, that can confirm, yes, they have met these criteria, and they actually are these things. So the good news for you nowadays is, if you want to be sustainable, if you want to get those type of things, look for the appropriate labels, and you can confirm, yes, you are doing the right thing with that. All right, so BREEAM was the first one. I mentioned Green Building Council Indonesia because that is the Green Building Council here locally. Has anybody been to this website, checked out GBCI? Anybody? What's that? Green Globes? You familiar with Green Globes? Oh, I like that. All right. So GBCI broke off from a group called U.S. Green Building Council, and their most famous product for evaluating buildings is called LEED. Throughout a lot of the world, you'll hear of LEED-rated buildings. So here in Indonesia, you have Green Ship. When I start doing my sample projects, I'm actually going to follow the format for Green Ship. All right? And so I changed the format that I actually use in the States to try to follow your format so that it'll make it more consistent with what you'll be looking at in the future. All right? And so LEED, or GBCI, the US GBC came out in about 2000. And on top of that, Green Building Initiative is a little bit different. So after BREEAM was initiated, then Green Building Initiative came out in Canada initially, and they moved to the US by about 2004. And so the big difference, BREEAM is probably the most complex one. So to get a building certified by BREEAM, you have to have an assessor show up to your job site. You'll put together binders upon binders of information. They will do a report, they'll send it off, it gets validated, and sent back. And so it's a document-intensive and on-person assessment. LEED, or the Green Building Council, is just the document side of that. It's strictly online. You send all your documents off to this black hole somewhere. Somebody evaluates it and sends back and says, yes, no, you got the points for it. Green Globes is the other side of that. It's strictly a personal side. You get a person like myself, licensed engineer, who is a Green Globes assessor. I actually show up on the job site and walk around and say, yes, they actually did install the drywall like they're supposed to. Yes, the carpet is low VOC. And you confirm that they had met all those criteria. And so anyway, that's some of that's the main rating system we're going to be talking about. And so as an assessor for Green Globes, I've done several buildings. I'll show you here in a minute. I just wanted to do a short little thing of why this topic. And so anyway, real quick, so why tourism industry? And this didn't show up well at all, did it? That's what the thing that screen might be bigger. And so tourism industry, as you know here in Bali, is huge. What percentage of your economy is the tourism industry? X percent. And so, just when I checked into my hotel, I had all these wonderful advertisements about how sustainable the hotel is. Kind of neat, right? I don't know if you can barely see it here, but okay, if I put my towels and save them, I save the world, right? If I don't put my towels on the towel rack, right, to preserve them, I'm going to kill the world off. Okay, kind of obvious message there. And so, I do have to tell you something that I thought was a little unusual about this. What's the languages this is written in? We got English, we got Japanese, and we got Chinese. Why no Indonesian? I'm starting to wonder about the hotel I'm staying at. And so, right. But I thought that was interesting. Okay, so I'm certainly seeing a lot more of that in industry today. The tourism industry is recognizing the value of making sustainable, and so they're certainly adding that into their projects. And so, a lot of my students, I would say over half of my students, are taking some type of sustainable courses. They see the problems with the world, the problems with climate change, and they recognize we've got to make a change. We're going to have some significant problems. I would imagine being here in Indonesia, you feel that same way. Water levels rise 10 feet, you're going to start getting some feet wet. And so, it can be a huge issue with that. It's even got to the point where there are places where you can do ecotourism. Costa Rica is huge for this. You can go down and live amidst the monkeys and the two-toed sloths and do some really cool things to be a lot more ecologically friendly. The hotels are getting very good at trying to educate the clients, try to teach some of these principles and take it back with them. And so, it also, These last ones, I realized from the work I've done in consulting, the state of Nevada offers a huge tax incentive to any businesses that get sustainable ratings. And based upon that, they gladly pay for me to come out and do the assessment. It's money they're making back very quickly from that. The other advantage is the life cycle cost savings. Over the life of a building, you save tremendously on operating costs, your maintenance costs. If I was to look at a life cycle of a building, typical buildings are between 40 to 60 years in the time that they're in operation. If I was to add up all the costs of building the facility, operating it, and then disposing of it, how much of the cost is on that operating side? What percentage? Anybody know? What percent? What percent is operating it relative to the first cost of constructing it? I want to build a $10 million hotel. Right? Operate for 40 years, what percent is that $10 million? Yeah. Typically, we find in our industry, the operating side is 80% of your overall cost. So if I build a $10 million hotel, it's probably going to cost me $70 million to operate it for that period of time. So if I can make, several $100,000 improvements that will save me 10% energy costs over the life of it, it'll pay for itself very quickly. And so try to educate people on the value of it. All right, moving on. I'm good for time. I have 10 minutes left. What's that? Oh, I'm flexible. You want 2 minutes? 10 minutes? Oh, yeah. No problem. I'll go through it fast. All right, so my sample project. So this is what I looked at in December. I looked at the Wynn Hotel. You guys heard of the Wynn Hotel in Las Vegas? It's a huge, beautiful facility. They got 3 globes, equivalent of LEED gold. They got the 3rd highest rating you could get. Fantastic building. I looked at MGM. You guys have heard of MGM? So MGM, the same as the movie makers. They also have big casinos in Las Vegas. I looked at they had a big convention center, and also they had an actual hotel casino. So I looked at that. In January, I got to go to Pearl Harbor, Hawaii to look at a car care center. So these are just a few of the projects that I'm going to pull out examples from of things that made them sustainable. All right, so the first thing we look at is the site. I'm just going to kind of highlight on some of the big things. This picture actually is not from any of those sample projects. This is from Florida. Looks kind of cute, doesn't it? Right? Nice and green. This is a fire station. This fire station was constructed over a parking lot that was there before, and there were some contaminated soils. So one of the cool things they did is they came onto the site, cleaned up all the hazardous chemicals, cleaned it up, and turned that contaminated area into a wetland. It's beautiful. I don't know if you can barely see. There's a nice pond that sits over here, runs out in that area. So the idea being, they're taking a site that nobody wanted to use because of contaminations, putting a fire station there, right? Makes a lot of sense. And still improving the environment on top of it, created this artificial wetland. So great example of what you can do to help improve the environment with the new construction. Next one. Another case for site, one of the issues that we run into, and imagine you have to that also. When you have that nice green lawn, what do you have to do to it to keep it green? Water, irrigation, right? So now you typically use potable water in most cases, water that you have to clean to purify the drinking level to spray that on your lawn. Not the smartest thing to do, right? But another issue that we have with the maintaining a lawn, if you have the lawnmower, right? You guys mow the lawn once a week, every couple weeks. Is that sustainable? No, it's horrible, right? One of the things we encourage doing when possible, first off, use native vegetation. Use things that don't require the watering, don't require as much sprinkling to it. This is an example that, again, this is in Las Vegas. This is what's called xyroscaping. These are all lots of little pretty rocks, okay? Now around here you might have a problem with that because you still have things growing up through the rocks, right? And you don't want to put chemicals on it. But there are better ways you can do that. Pick vegetation that doesn't have to be mowed. Pick vegetation that's local, and it can make a huge difference for a particular site. Stormwater management, try to get the rains, keep the water on the site. And try to maximize these green spaces as much as possible so that you keep the water infiltrating onto the site. You don't get these drawdown areas, your aquifer stays charged, and it's better all around the environment. The next big area is energy. And so the first portion of this is sub-metering. And then what we encourage doing is on all your major components, have meters to demonstrate the energy usage. It's significant. If I monitor the meters throughout their life, I can tell if the energy use starts to go up, it means the equipment is soon to fail. And so it's a great indicator that, man, maybe I need to buy a new 2-ton HVAC unit before it fails on me. Right? The picture here is actually of a flat plate heat exchanger. This is in the MGM Park Hotel. And so what they do is by using these flat plate heat exchangers for about 6 months of the year, they need no additional HVAC or cooling in order to maintain the temperatures within their entire hotel complex. It's a very high efficient heat exchanger. It's a great resource. What they do is they run the chill water and hot water through this, create the hydronic loops that run throughout the entire 15-story towers. And so they have a whole bank of these heat exchangers. They found that by using this system, they were saving 30% energy beyond what they had before the remodel project. So really neat process for doing that. There's a number of other really cool techniques that I don't have to show pictures of. Oh, that's all right. I'll just talk about other energy things that I've run into over the past. Are you familiar with what's called an enthalpy wheel? Enthalpy wheel. Has anybody heard of an enthalpy wheel? All right. Enthalpy wheel is pretty neat. What it does is it dehumidifies the air and also takes your exhaust air to precondition your coming in air. Right? And so it can be extremely useful, drops your humidity down, and also drops your temperature down at the same time. And so it significantly reduces the amount of HVAC that you need. And so a great way to save energy on buildings. And so we have one of those installed in our building itself. Another thing that I've seen that works really well for energy savings is, do you know what a ground source heat pump is? Ground source heat pumps says, I'm going to take pipes and drill them about 100 meters into the ground. I'm going to run the water through that. Because when you go down about 100 meters, the temperature is what? Maybe 15 degrees Celsius? Great natural way to chill your water, chill your resources, chill your air conditioning, right? Without having to run through a major mechanical system. So another good one I've seen. Does the energy here cost more during the day than does at night? Cost per kilowatt hour. Does it stay constant all day, or do you get spikes during the middle of the day? What's that? It's constant. It's constant. Your energy stays constant. The cost. Yeah. All right. There are lots of places in the country in which, California is notorious. The middle of the day, when everybody's got their energy on, it will cost 3 to 4 times as much as at night. And so I've seen projects in which they have these huge vats where all night long, all they do is make ice. Because at night, the energy is 1/4 the cost during the day. And during the day, they turn it off, and all they do is run the ducts, right, through all this nice cold ice vats, right? And so they make a dramatic energy saving result of that, right? Moving on with energy, natural lighting. Go. So this is a wind project. What they have is these beautiful skylights that cover the entire retail center. And so by bringing in the light through these, it does a wonderful job of lighting the entire interior. You don't need any additional lights during the day. It makes plenty of sense. It's just a great resource for you to do it. And so, all right, moving on. We'll try to speed up. On to renewables. The wind is actually able to maintain about 20 to 30% of their total energy use by using photovoltaic arrays. And so on-site renewable energies is something to definitely consider. Do you use a lot of photovoltaics here in Indonesia? Not yet, all right? There's some great resources to help you and plan those. If you're interested, I'll try to provide those later. And so it makes sense if you get the energy, if you get the cost incentives, the tax incentives to help pay for it. So, all right, and, water section, You're all used to low flow fixtures. It's easy, it makes sense, right? I won't go into that. Water's an easy one to get points up. Moving on. Excellent. Alternate sources of water. One of the things that really annoys me is how we use fresh, clean, potable water to flush our toilets. Right? When you think about it, it's like the most insane thing you do. Because their fresh potable water doesn't come out of the ocean. Right? And so, or to irrigate your landscape. Right? And so there are a number of ways you can help say that. There are a number of cities that do what's called purple pipe. They take a reclaimed water, your sewer water, clean it up to the level you put on your lawn, and they'll distribute it out to the rest of your town. So you're not using potable water, you're using reclaimed water, you just don't want to drink out of it. You see it on golf courses about all of it. This project, in particular, is using condensate. So this is at a Veterans Center in Oregon, and they have steam pipes that run all throughout the complex. And in steam pipes, you get condensate that comes out, and so they collect the condensate and use that as your makeup water. And so one of the things I encourage for here, you have a similar problem that we have in Florida. Your air conditioning, doesn't the thing always seem to just leak all the time? What's that leaking from that you're seeing? That's condensation, okay, because you've got such a high humidity. I encourage on projects to plan for that. It's going to happen. If you don't plan for it, what ends up happening? You get that black mold, right, on your condensate line. It gets slippery, it looks nasty. Plan in advance. Plan to collect it. Plan what you're going to do with it, and you get a better looking building, and you take care of the maintenance side anyway. Material side, this is actually, I don't know if you can see what, it's a root system in the roof. This is actually the Park MGM. And so the idea being try to preserve additional materials. This got points because this was actually in a bar in the old part of Las Vegas, and took it out from another building and used it in this building. So anytime you can reuse products, you're always better for the environment. And so, one of the things we also give credit for is what we call prefab materials. The whole idea that build it off-site where you have total control of it, disassemble it, and then reassemble it on site. Reduces your waste dramatically. It makes it a lot more efficient for your construction. In this project, this was the MGM Convention Center. All your interior partition walls were all prefabbed off-site. They did this really cool BIM technology where they got exact precision measurements and cut everything to fit in right on the dime. So it worked really well for that. And so, moving on. Indoor health is the next major area, and the big one that we're looking for this is outside views. That whole thing of people like being able to look outside, and so try to encourage that in projects as much as possible. We're going to also talk on this is the CO2 monitoring. The idea that you don't just run your HVAC nonstop, use the occupancy. As your occupancy goes up, you increase the amount of airflow. If your occupancy goes down, decrease the amount of airflow. It makes it a lot more effective. The other qualities of that is try to plan for the chemical pollutants and how to take care of that. Indoor health and comfort. The big one I'm looking for on this is the lighting levels. So if you designed for a particular lighting level, you want to confirm after the construction, did you actually get those lighting levels? Did you get what you're supposed to so people are comfortable with that? Do you get the thermal comfort? Do people like the temperature range that you're operating at? And is it nice and quiet? Do you have the peacefulness, right? So these are all very important qualities, especially you can imagine in hotels that you're staying at. You don't want to, has anybody stayed in a hotel in which you got the HVAC, your air conditioning that runs all night, loud, noisy, you hear your neighbors, all these issues. It makes it unpleasant. So factor that in during your design process, and it makes a lot of sense. Next category is building environmental management. And the first portion of that is waste management. The whole idea of plan to take care of recycling waste up front. So I got this picture when I got off the airplane here in Bali. You guys recognize that from the airport? You've seen these before? The little water, you refill your water bottle stations. What are you conserving with that? Water? No, you're saving on not having that one-use bottle. The whole idea is you use your bottle multiple times, so you're reducing your waste rate is the benefit to it. And brilliant technology. We're trying to get that more and more in the States. And so I applaud you for doing that. And so one of my big emphasis on this is integrated project delivery. The whole idea that to make this work well, it requires a combination. Architects, you need to work with the engineers, you need to work with the interior designers, you need to work with the maintenance people who are going to maintain the building afterwards. Quite often people complain that sustainable buildings cost more. They do if you don't work in collaboration. I'll give you a classic example. Your window guy comes in and says, I want to have a double pane, low E, nitrogen-filled window. Really high energy efficient window. If he has not worked with your HVAC guy, your air conditioning guy, he's just going to design the way you normally would. But because of the low E, the energy efficient window, you're reducing that temperature gain from the spaces. So if your window designer works with the air conditioning designer, the air conditioning designer can put in a smaller system. If he puts in a smaller system, he can make it more efficient for the same amount of cost. And essentially, you get a wash in your costs by doing it that way. Now, and also in conjunction with that, because of this low E window, you're not going to have all the sun bleaching out all your carpet and furniture. So you can work with your maintenance people also on those sides. So it's this whole integration. Everybody has to work together to really get the fully efficient project and not have it cost a whole bunch extra. That's the whole idea. How much time? I went over, didn't I? I did it? Cool. All right, any questions? What do we got? You like my students. It's like, oh, it's lunchtime. Any questions? Yes, sir, in the back.
Sorry. Thank you for the time and place, first of all.
Oh, hang on. That's going to be a great shot, won't it?
First, I would like to thank you for the time and place. And I would like to welcome you to Bali.
Oh, I love it here. This is wonderful.
Thank you. First of all, as we know, Bali is one of the most developed places in Indonesia. And considering that, the places where Bali's development is really, really low, such as northern parts of Bali, which means the southern part of Bali has already been developed without the sustainability in check, or you will say not considered yet in the past. What will be the best solution to implement this sustainability into the already developed places in Bali?
Excellent question. So the whole idea is how do you introduce sustainability in places that have not been developed before? And so, correct? Is that kind of a quick summary?
That has to be developed.
That has to be developed. And so, we run this is a different speaker. It sounds better, doesn't it? We run into the same issue in the States, in that different communities recognize that they're bringing in new businesses, and how do you make it sustainable? Ideally, what happens is the community itself establishes the parameters and says, we will become a sustainable community. We have whole neighborhoods that do this. If you look under USGBC and LEED, you will see a specific area called neighborhood development, in which they sit there and say, all right, we are now expanding to this region, and we want to make it as sustainable as possible, and so therefore we're going to require anybody building in this region has got to meet these criteria. You have to be energy efficient. You have to conserve your water. We as a community will do things to improve that. One of the best examples I've seen of that is actually in Germany. There's a town called Freiburg. And Freiburg sit there and said that they will make their entire community as sustainable as possible. They will discourage driving in the central portion of town. They're encouraging pedestrians, bicycles. They kind of took the mentality that by doing ultra high efficiency homes, it's a style of home called passive home, P-A-S-S-I-V, right? You can look it up. Passive homes in Germany use about as much energy as it takes for your hair dryer. It's incredible, incredibly high efficient homes. It's all based upon using extreme high efficiency heat exchangers. You take the temperature of the room as it is, run through a heat exchanger, incoming air is 99% of the heat. Your body temperature makes up the difference. It's wonderful, wonderful, great technology. All right, so you get this high efficiency home, and then you put photovoltaics on the roof. Now your home is actually making more energy than what the occupants need. So you take the excess energy and use that for your community energy. Essentially, the combination of your homes creates your power plant. Pretty cool, right? And so it takes that neighborhood mentality of, we are going to work as a community to do that. Now the difficult thing is selling that to the community. In many cases, communities like it because it actually makes it a bit of an attraction. People want to come to this sustainable community, see how it operates. The occupants enjoy it. A lot of people feel they get a better quality, you're basically designed for a better quality of life. And so the key to it is start up front to plan for it effectively. Now, if you haven't done that, you can always come in later to do it. What can be a little bit challenging with this in a lot of cases, it's a hard thing for us in the United States to do because we're very legislative adverse. We don't want to have laws that control the way we do things. So if you're more amicable to, all right, I'm willing to keep it sustainable, I'm willing to abide by these laws, then it becomes a lot more easier to do that. And so it really needs that type of control. You need essentially the city planners to buy in and say, yes, we're going to do that for you. That kind of help your understanding? But there are a lot of good resources out to help in planning for that type of stuff. It takes some really good planners to assist. All right. What are the questions?
Pertanyaan lagi ya, adik-adik dan Bapak Ibu. Yang mahasiswa arsitek tidak ada nanya, yang mahasiswa teknik tidak ada nanya ya.
You ask in Indonesia if you like.
Yes, ada. Saudara Indonesia juga. Nanti saya terjemahkan. Ayo.
Or ask in Italian.
I think since you
guys are shy.
Probably you have explained it so clearly, and then oh, they are shy. I know they are shy. They have plenty in their mind, but they don't want to express it at the moment. And one of our culture, if you're not aware is here, they're good at approaching people, and rather than talking, out loud in a public audience. So I'm sure later on, once the class is finished, the lecture finished, and everybody will kind of line up like ants and bees and coming to you and asking questions. So
I'll go ahead and offer also that if you have any questions, shoot me an email. And so I think you have my email address. And so you can contact the faculty here and get my email address. And if you have any questions about any of these issues, send me an email. I'm happy to respond. Just make sure you address it, put my name in it. And so, dear Mark Russell, right? Because otherwise, if you don't, it may have been my spam folder accidentally. So, if you're trying to sell me some, Prince land or something like that.
So, tidak ada pertanyaan lagi ya, Ibu Bapak dan one more question.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mark. I want to ask a silly question, maybe that's not understood by us. I want to know about how to implement a natural lighting in the building.
Naturalized.
Natural lighting.
Oh, natural lighting.
Okay.
Ah, yeah. Oh, there's some wonderful ways of natural lighting. The classic way is just windows. Windows themselves. Plan for the light to come in. Plan to use interior surfaces that will reflect the light back as much as possible. Another great way is skylighting. In the skylights. The thing with skylights, to be honest with you, is trying to keep the water out at the time, your gas can start to fade, fade on, but properly designed ones do a great job with that. One of the things that, so for example, if you're in the floor beneath us, how do you get natural lighting into there, right? You guys heard of what are called solar tubes? Look up solar tubes. They're the coolest thing. The project I did in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii had solar tubes all throughout it. And they were bringing in so much light in their solar tubes, they had to put shading devices on them. It can be really intense. The whole idea is that you have these prism-type developed device on the roof, and it reflects the light into a tube, right? Not a very big tube. The tube comes into the space and it diffuses out. It's more light than a typical LED. It's incredible. And so that's probably one of the best ways I've seen, bring in that natural lighting. And so they're pretty cost effective, and it's a pretty neat technology. And so.
With a special technology or directly from the sun like that? And then can we transmit only the lighting, not the energy? Only the light.
The light?
Transmit to the direction, to the right direction.
No, it does not require direct sunlight. No, it just requires it to be bright out. It's incredible how well the solar tubes work. Yeah. And so just being bright out will bring in from basically, early in the morning it's not that bright out, so it's not going to be a huge difference. But from the time, 8 o'clock until, 4 or 5 in the evening, it works wonderful. It does not require direct sunlight on it. And so, very effective. Thank you.
Ampun, Mbak. Ampun. Ada lagi? Ya, deh.
Oh, another one. Ah, man.
I'm Lisa, and I was listening that there were a lot of criteria for this green architecture, and there were site, vegetation, energy, skylight, water, materials, and indoor health or comfort. If we're making resort or something big that is tourism for everyone, so the capacity is more than just one family for a house. Okay? How do you deal with making it all available? Because I was confused whether if we make only for the vegetation, energy, and skylight, is it still labeled as sustainable design, or is it just we should complete everything, since making a resort is not as easy or as designing as our own house. If we use solar panels for the energy to reduce the energy, and then if you use the windows, you both use it.
Yep.
I mean,
I fully understand.
Yeah.
And I probably didn't clarify that very well. And so rating systems, they're typically based on a point system. And they look at all these things. So you get so many points per site, you get so many points for energy, so many points for water, so many points for each of these categories. Depending upon how many points you earn establishes what level your building is rated at. And so, for example, if you see a building as being LEED rated, they're typically rated as certified, means they got at least 40 points. Silver means they got at least 50 points. Gold means they got at least 60 points. And platinum means they got at least 80 points. And so based upon the more things that you do, establishes what level you are. And so it makes it a pretty handy way to sit there and compare. So if Jorge constructed a building and he gets LEED Gold certified based on his points, and I construct a building, I'm just LEED Silver, most likely his building has got some qualities that make it a little bit more sustainable than mine. And so depending upon you typically award the points if only one spot of the particular building meets the criteria, you're probably not going to get the whole points, right? And it really, a lot depends upon the point system. So some criteria, for example, low VOC paints or low VOC carpet, right? You know what VOCs are? Volatile organic compounds. It's basically the carcinogen components that are off-gassing, right? It's that new car smell you get when you go into a building, okay? And so if you use any VOC product in your entire resort, you do not get the points. So it's a tough one to get. But if you tell your subcontractors up front not to use them, they can do that, and it's effective. It's not as hard to do as you might think. Now, photovoltaics. If you use photovoltaics anywhere, you get the points for it. So there's some criteria that will spell out and say just using it gives you the points. Other ones that will say it has to be consistent. And so there are very detailed descriptions. If you go to the Green Building Council Indonesia website, and you can download the criteria, and it will spell out what those criteria are in detail for you. And I actually encourage all of you to do that. If you're, as an architect, this isn't really important information. My preaching to you for a minute is, as architects, you're the ones doing it. You're the guys, you're going to be out there designing these buildings in the future. Don't you want to design the most optimum building you can? Don't you want it to be as energy efficient as possible? Not all the time is your owner going to be buying into that, but still you have that influence. Often, if you can encourage or help them in that process, you're the ones that are going to make that change for the future. And so, take every opportunity you can to try to learn that, right? A little advertisement on top of that. Most of these rating systems have a accreditation process in which you can be accredited to know something about these criteria. I encourage you to look into that. I imagine Green Globe Council Indonesia has the LEED criteria that you can get credited. Green Globes has a criteria. I'm a LEED AP. I'm also BREEAM International. I have a number of these accreditations. Look into it. It's a great thing to add to your resume and to help you in your professional career.
Thank you. I think we have to put a pause on, maybe a dot on that because of the timing. Anyway, thank you so much, Mark, for your very interesting lecture, and also you get quite numbers of interesting questions as well. And you point out quite numbers of elements of the sustainability, especially in regard to architectural design in tourism sector. So thank you so much. Everybody, can you please give a big applause to Mark Walker. Thank you. Thank you. Now we are heading to the Oleh is an assistant professor of family and consumer economics and state specialist in the area of family financial management for the Department of Family, Youth and Community Sciences, Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences at the University of Florida. He earned his doctoral degree in financial planning, housing and consumer economics from the University of Georgia. His current research focuses on financial risk tolerance, its measurement using modern psychometric theory, e.g. item response theory and RAS measurement theory, and its cross-cultural and transnational application. Additional current projects include research efforts on financial well-being and financial education with researchers in Latin America and Asia. Oleh, your time is yours. Thank you.
Thanks for the introduction.
You will be having up to 11:40. Is that okay?
That's perfectly
Thank
fine.
you.
Thank you, Mark. That was good. All right, let me just set a timer, because if not, I can go and talk forever, and you probably don't want to do that. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for all being here. So no economists in the house. Really? Not even one? How about social sciences? Anyone in the social sciences or with background in the social sciences? What about methodology? Ooh, okay. This is going to be an interesting audience. All right. So it'll be an intro. And I think it will be important for everyone, especially those who are thinking about working with humans, which most of us work with humans, interact with humans in many capacities. So we'll talk about that in a minute. So there was a little bit more in terms of the introduction. I just will kind of like recap very quickly. I'm an assistant professor of consumer economics at the University of Florida. My background is I'm a trained economist and also a psychometrician, which is a fancy word for someone who essentially does quantitative modeling for latent constructs, for social constructs, essentially. So pretty much my work is I sit behind the computer and try to mathematically model concepts that are not measurable, such as happiness. There is not really a measure for happiness, so rather I'm trying to come up with a mathematical formula for it. My research, current research, is primarily in China, the United States, Colombia, Brazil, and Turkey. I have active projects in all those countries, and I would really like to include Indonesia there. It would be really nice. All right, so very quickly in terms of what's going to be my lecture about, and I'll just readjust as needed. So I'll talk about sustainability research again and what it means from the social sciences perspective. I think we hear a lot from sustainability research in terms of the environmental sciences, but let me give you the perspective from the social sciences from an economist who works actually with many environmental scientists. Then I'll talk about the social ecological model, which is a model that we use in the social sciences and economics, and that we think is a good fit to actually integrate our disciplines. I'll talk about indicators, outcomes, outputs, behaviors. I'll just go around some terminology. And then I'll talk about a proposal I essentially have for pretty much everyone who is here who's working on sustainability. What would be the key measures that we should be looking at when it comes to sustainability? And then Q&A. All right. So you have to forgive me for this very not so visible chart there. But essentially, what I'm trying to show there is that sustainability, as Dr. Russell mentioned in his presentation, it's pretty much seen from three main areas: social, environmental, and also economic. Now, what typically happens is that us economists will look at economic sustainability in silo. We'll just do it by ourselves. Very often, environmental scientists will just look at sustainability by themselves, and they will not really integrate or bring to their team social science. And so each one of us has these very specific sustainability definitions based on our disciplines. And so what I try to actually propose is to move forward and go into a more transdisciplinary approach. So here's just essentially breaking down those research silos that we see when we are analyzing sustainability issues from our own different disciplines. So if you look at this picture, essentially, different people are looking at different parts of the elephant, and based on what they see, they're essentially thinking that that's a tree, or that's a road, or a wall. But if you see it from a more comprehensive perspective, it is an elephant, right? So it really calls for us researchers to take a more transdisciplinary research approach, and I'll talk about what that means. So when we talk about sustainability research, and this is really something that we're trying to hammer over and over in the States to try to convince everyone to move to this more transdisciplinary approach. Here are three definitions of sustainability research. And essentially, if you look at it, it encompasses more than the traditionally three areas. It really goes into considering the cultural aspects. This morning we were just talking about how heritage could be conserved in a place like Bali, where you have a high influx of tourism. So if you have too many tourists coming here, and that is to some degree a potential source of income, and it might be a viability to actually try to adapt to the tourist cultural values rather than conserving. So when we talk about conservation and sustainability, it's not only about environmental aspects, it's also about cultural aspects. And so that transdisciplinary approach is really encompassing those social, also those human well-being aspects of sustainability. All right, so this is what usually we see, and I mean, academia, universities, we're essentially organized that way. There are many architects here, or future to-be architects, engineers, and we pretty much think of ourselves as, I'm going to be an architect, but we don't really think of ourselves as, I'm going to be an architect who's going to be able to integrate and work with people in different disciplines. We're not necessarily trained that way. So we really think about very specific disciplines. Over the last, we'll say, 5 decades, there has been more need for multidisciplinary research. And that alone was not enough. Combining different disciplines was not enough to really understand issues, and most importantly, to solve problems. So we went into interdisciplinary research, which was essentially us going to another field, trying to borrow models from other fields and apply it in our own. So for example, going into the field of health and sciences or the medical sciences and borrow some of their models to apply it to economics, for instance. That again was not enough. And so the call now for researchers is to move into this state of mind of transdisciplinarity, which is essentially merging all these fields, working together, and eventually proposing all these solutions that are of transdisciplinary nature, that essentially will tackle different areas of a problem. So, in the social sciences, in economics, we have different theoretical models, and this is one that we often use. And if you look at it, it really starts with the individual at the very bottom. You go into interpersonal relationships, organizational aspects of this model, community, and public policy. So this model could actually be extended and could be used for sustainability research. So when you're thinking about research in the future and thinking in terms of sustainability research, think about a more comprehensive model where it actually encompasses the individual, the relationships that are essentially present, the organizational networks as well, and obviously the environment, which is important. And you can see there at the top, you will have the climate and local geography. Those are obviously very important, but you need to consider the individual as well. So in this case will be, if you're doing sustainability research in Bali, it's not about only the profitability on how much you actually can make by building a nice resort, but it's also thinking about what will be the aspects of urbanizing Bali for the community in Bali. That would be really aspects to consider. All right, let me just move into what indicators mean, and essentially that is my field of expertise, and just making sure that I'm not running out of time, I'm good. But what are indicators? Indicators are just essentially items that we use to measure, again, different concepts. So in economics, we use something called utility. That's the term that we use in economics, is utility. And what are we trying to measure there? Satisfaction. So how satisfied a consumer is with a product, we call that utility. In education, intelligence. You know that we measure intelligence in higher education with IQ tests. A test that has been controversial pretty much. And demography, we have ethnicity. How is ethnicity actually measured? By country of birth, nationality, language spoken, racial group, religion, and so on and so forth. So as you can see, there are different indicators of a variable that you're trying to measure. So based on that premise, let me move into indicators that I think are important for sustainability. And let me then introduce something that is even more daring. But before that, let's just kind of like very quickly review some aspects here, just because I want to make sure that it's clear what I mean by indicators. So indicators certainly are related to outputs, also outcomes, impact, but they're not the same. And very often in research, you will see that people or researchers will talk about outputs as indicators. That's not the same. And so I want to make sure that this is clear. Outputs is essentially just those processes that you will get based on activities. Outcomes is what you hope to accomplish in terms of like changing knowledge or skills. Impact is that long-term, essentially behavioral change that you will see in a community or potentially at the intra level. All right, let me just jump into the 5 dimensions that I think is what is important. All right, so again, we talk about sustainability over and over. And when we talk about sustainability, it's hard to really understand what we mean by it, or how essentially to measure that. So we propose 5 dimensions of sustainability that essentially can be core, that could be measured here in Indonesia, in the United States. And why would that be important? Because then you can actually compare. Then you can actually make actually fair comparisons. So these are the 5 dimensions: prosperity, planet, people, peace, and partnership. Now, how will I even measure those? Well, there is not really a way for you, room to reinvent the wheels when you actually have measures that have been used for years. So if you're trying to measure the dimension of prosperity in terms of sustainability, there are these measures that are pretty well known. So the one that I would really say as a psychometrician that is quite valid and it has been extensively researched is the Inclusive Wealth Index, used by many organizational, by many federal agencies, not only in the United States but abroad, adopted by many other countries as well. So again, if you collect that in the United States and in Indonesia, you can make comparisons, fair comparisons, rather than talking about sustainability defined as X versus sustainability defined as Y in Indonesia. Planet. So these are 4 different measures that could be used from the environmental perspective. So if you're measuring, for instance, you want to understand environmental sustainability in a community, you could look at the global green gases emissions for that community or that country, or the global biodiversity index. Now let me move to the other 3. So those are people, peace, and partnership. We know that we live in a world where not every single country is at peace. So that is an important aspect. Sustainability cannot only be achieved by just having environmental sustainability or social sustainability. We need also that peace component. As a matter of fact, we know that there was a big event a couple of weeks ago when we had one of our presidents, many of our presidents meeting in Hanoi for peace reasons. So it's important for sustainability. For people, the people dimension, Gini coefficient, that's an economic index. And for partnership, essentially just looking at those partnerships in the community. All right, I'm gonna actually just recap this part because I don't think this is gonna be of much, it's relevant, but I think I just kind of wanna make a note of it, but I don't think I'm gonna go in there. So if you are ever doing research with humans, subject humans, an individual who talks, eats, and will respond to you, you actually need to consider some regulatory bodies that have been placed in order to protect the participants or respondents. So if you are given a questionnaire to do research, whether it's in landscape architecture or engineer, you actually need their consent. In Indonesia, suffice to know that there is a law that actually protects respondents from being coerced or abused from us researchers. So essentially, what it's important to keep in mind is that if we're doing research with humans, there has to be 3 elements: respect for persons, justice, and beneficence. So, and I think Mark actually talked about that. You not essentially maximizing possible benefits and minimizing risk. Do not harm. Justice, essentially treating people equally, essentially. Also important to talk about that when we're doing sustainability research and you're working with vulnerable population, that means low-income children, the elderly, prisoners, you have to take additional steps to essentially establish that you are being thoughtful about the way, in order not to coerce them. So that, I think, is important to consider when doing research in general with humans. Again, I was just bringing more the human aspect rather than the building, so that's it's a different perspective, but I'm happy to answer any questions. I do a lot of work with people in the environmental sciences, so climate change in China, for instance, is a lot of the work that I'm doing, adaptation, mitigation. It is interesting to really look at how mitigation and adaptation starts really at the individual level, goes into the community level, goes into a county level, state level, federal level, and then at the country level, which is what we're hoping that countries can get and hopefully grow. All right, now I can entertain questions, if there are.
Silakan kalau ada pertanyaan. Oleh, thank you very much. It was very interesting, and especially the when you are talking about sustainability in terms of prosperity, planet, people, peace, and partnership. I think it's a quite awakening perspective to look at sustainability as holistic as the point of view you point out earlier, on top of what Mark Russell pointed out earlier. Sustainability look at based on economic, social aspects, as well as environment. So I think it's a good synergy between the both point of view. Question please from my colleagues, the academics of Udayana University, as well as my students. Anything?
It's okay not to ask questions.
Yes. Ya, Dek, silakan.
Since no one is asking any questions, might as well entertain myself with one. Thank you for the explanation, which is really interesting since no one really, in Udayana University itself, no one really is doing interdisciplinary scientific measurements. As I was looking at the presentation, I saw that the sustainability aspect should see the economic, social, and environmental aspects and should be considered with one another. As we know, there oftentimes are confirmations between each other, where one aspect, let's say the environmental aspect, has a bias against the, let's say, social aspect on something. Let's say green farming or something. Is there a way to mitigate this bias, or is it just something that comes natural with it?
Good question, yeah. Okay, let me start actually by just, because you pointed out something important. Very first thing that I just want to say is that in the US, in order to actually even publish these days in top tier journals, transdisciplinary research essentially it's almost mandatory. If you want to go in top journals, in really very well-known outlets, transdisciplinary is where essentially what they're asking. They're not really asking for just the economic perspective, but a more global perspective. What we have done, and it seems that Indonesians are doing as well, particularly with the Smart City program, is bringing people from different disciplines. I can tell you, as an economist, I have my biases about environmental aspects, and I will be able just to cover this much in terms of what I can contribute for environmental sciences. But I sure can provide a lot of insight in terms of economic issues. So, talking to one of your faculty members this morning, it seems that a lot of the teams that are built here are transdisciplinary or at least multidisciplinary. And so it's just a matter of starting essentially amalgamating or merging those fields more and more to the point that theoretically they're sound, methodologically they're sound. But I think that's a really good way to actually at least mitigate some of that bias that you will see at least in research. But a really good question, absolutely.
Ada lagi ya pertanyaan? Yes, I agree with you. The idea of bringing more kind of field together to work on the sustainability is the way for the future. And at the university level, at Udayana University, we now even have a scheme, both of research schemes as well as the public works scheme that bring and promote. One cannot apply for that scheme unless they are bringing lecturers and students from different faculties. So we are promoting that in for the last couple of years now, and I can't agree more with that idea. So yeah, I think that should be the way for the future. Any more question? Pertanyaan lagi ya, Ibu Bapak dan adik-adik mahasiswa? I think they are shy.
Don't be shy.
No, as I mentioned earlier, don't worry, they will approach you later on.
Sounds good.
But yeah, thank you so much, Sohi, for an awakening lecture.
Absolutely, and if you want to contact me, my email is there. As Mark said, just make sure you put your name and tell me where this email is coming, because otherwise it might go in the wrong spot. But pretty open to answer questions or get in touch if you have further questions or comments about the topic.
Thank you so much. Can we please give a big applause to Andre? Thank you. Thank you. So now I will hand in the time again to Tasya. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Watika. Now I would like to welcome Professor Inyoman Gede Antara to come forward to give us a concluding remark and also presents the token of appreciation from Udayana University to our guest lecturers.
Ibu Bapak sekalian, jadi tibalah kita pada akhir dari kuliah visiting profesor ini. Kami atas nama semua pimpinan Universitas Udayana mengucapkan banyak-banyak terima kasih kepada Ibu Bapak para dosen yang berpartisipasi dalam kegiatan ini. Kemudian adik-adik mahasiswa yang saya muliakan, baik yang S1, S2, S3. Ya, tapi ada juga yang dosen sekaligus mahasiswa S3. Ya. Jadi mudah-mudahan ini memberikan manfaat yang besar dalam rangkaian perjalanan proses pembelajaran Bapak Ibu sekalian dan adik-adik mahasiswa yang saya hormati. Sekali lagi terima kasih atas partisipasinya. Mudah-mudahan ini tidak yang terakhir, tetapi nanti tetap kita akan usahakan untuk memberikan visiting profesor tidak aja di bidang ini, tetapi di bidang yang lain-lain juga. Saya tambahkan lagi sedikit, ini Bapak sekalian, saya review lagi, ini adalah proyek USAID SHERA kita kerjasama dengan Universitas Indonesia. Ada di situ Padjajaran, ada Sriwijaya, Diponegoro dan Udayana. Jadi partner kita di luar, satu lagi yang baru bergabung adalah UTS. Sorry, I'm Indonesian person. Satu lagi UTS Universitas Teknologi Sumbawa baru bergabung tahun ini. Nah kemudian partner kita di luar, ya ini. Jadi our partner Savannah State University, Florida University of Florida, I think Georgia Institute of Technology, GTEC also. Ya kemudian Alabama A&M University. Nah itu universitas yang terkemuka di Amerika, sangat membuka pintu untuk ibu bapak sekalian. Ya, manfaatkan ini adik-adik mahasiswa, para dosen untuk meningkatkan grade-nya. Ya, siapa tahu nanti adik-adik yang S1 ingin melanjutkan ke S2, adik-adik yang S2 ingin melanjutkan ke S3, coba aja ini apply nanti di sini ya. Nah kemudian yang S3 mungkin jadi postdoctoral program. Yang sudah doktor ini mungkin targetnya adalah postdoctoral program. Ya, nah kemudian tentu juga visiting professor di universitas. Atau nanti manakala kita melakukan penelitian research di sini yang sarana prasarananya tidak memungkinkan, siapa tahu teman-teman partner ini memiliki sarana prasarana yang kita perlukan. Jadi komunikasi dan itu akan dibantu. Ya, gitu. Nah kemudian yang lain programnya itu adalah workshop untuk peningkatan publikasi. Ya, para dosen bisa ikut, pendampingan publikasi, terindeks, fokus, dan seterusnya. Nah, kemudian juga ada nanti international conference. Ya, 2020 kita sebagai host international conference on 20 ya, oleh Smart City ya. Ya nanti kita punya conference internasional 2020 ya. 2020 we have international conference. We do hope that you all can join our conference. Nah, kemudian ya, banyak riset dan workshop yang adik-adik mahasiswa bisa ikuti maupun para dosen. Jadi kami tugaskan Smart City, teman-teman Smart City Riset Group yang diketua oleh Dr. Gusti Ayu Made Swatiko dari Arsitektur, dan ada beberapa di situ teman-teman yang bergabung. Nah, kemudian Smart City Group ini bekerjasama dengan LPPM. Nanti mengerim hal-hal yang berkaitan dengan kebutuhan kita untuk belajar dan untuk riset. Ya, itu yang bisa kita sampaikan. Juga yang hal-hal yang lain berkaitan dengan kemudian tentang Erasmus Plus juga. Kemarin kita sudah jajaki sehingga nanti internasional kita sudah jalan semua. Terima kasih terutama Bu Gam dan teman-teman Smart City, ya, Riset Group, LPPM, dan yang lainnya yang telah membantu. Ya. So I would like to thanks to Profesor Markusel and to Professor George Ruiz for your coming to give visiting lecture. It's very useful for us. Then we are pleased to have you in the next future to come again to the Udayana University. And then finally we do hope that, as I mentioned before, between Udayana University and Universitas Udayana will cooperate very closely in order to promote our cooperation in the next future. Thank you very much, and then give a big applause to our lecturer. Thank you very much.
Mark and Oleh, can you please come forward? Our Associate Vice Chancellor for Academics will be presenting you with a token of appreciation from our university. Bagi Bapak dan Ibu, khususnya adik-adik mahasiswa, sertifikat untuk SKP bisa diambil di luar, dan juga untuk Ibu Bapak dosen, sertifikatnya bisa juga diambil di murah atau hari di meja registrasi. Terima kasih sekali lagi atas partisipasinya.